Welcome to Out of Home Insider, the first podcast for media and marketing executives that connects how offline attention drives conversion. My name is Tim Rowe, and for the past 3 years, I've been interviewing guests about their unique experiences in bridging this misunderstood and undervalued opportunity for brands to create alchemy in the real world. Today's guest is Eddie Yang. Eddie is the founder of Visual Feeder, a first-of-its-kind projection mapping platform that enables brands to engage with pedestrians and passersby via projection mapping in store windows, and how they're making it available as part of a scalable strategy by unlocking network effects and capturing economies of scale. Eddie shares his journey into out-of-home advertising and how a passion for art and the real world inspired the launch of Visual Feeder, and how they approached landing Lyft as their first client through 100% sweat and hustle. Eddie also shares his experience with Techstars, an accelerator program that provides investment and mentorship to startups, and how they've helped Visual Feeder to grow faster and avoid costly mistakes. Even how they helped Visual Feeder to secure their first $1.7 million in seed funding to continue scaling in Chicago and New York. And so the big idea I'd like you to consider throughout this conversation is how can you enable more engagement, whether by taking time to offer creative feedback, by publishing thought leadership that educates interested folks on the thing that you are an expert of, or how to enhance a campaign for maximum engagement because you understand that engagement drives outcomes and that the truest objective to solve for is in answering the question, how do we prioritize engagement over everything else? Vanity metrics be damned. Without further ado, let's go.
Welcome, everybody, to the Out of Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
Eddie, I'm excited to have this conversation. We first connected a few weeks back, and the concept was really, really interesting. So I'm excited to get to unpack that with you here today. But how'd you get into out of home?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on the show. Getting into out of home, that's a good question. So I actually got into out of home through art, actually public art. So when we first got into the whole media and out of home advertising, I was inspired by a lot of murals and public art that was sponsored with brands. So we saw a lot of different cool murals throughout Chicago. And I always wondered, how do we become a part of this? And I wanted to create a service for projecting onto empty window spaces with art and visuals, and then quickly got into the whole out-of-home world and the aspect of that. So I always loved the visceral image of billboards and visual content, like in your face. It's like the sheer size of it and the physical appearance of it. I always thought was it was the most engaging type of marketing and advertising opposed to digital. So actually I came from a arts world and then just the physical aspect of billboards.
It makes sense. And that is, as our industry Yoda, my dear friend Rick Robinson says that's the gravitas of out of home. And what you've done that's so unique and engagement is really at the core of what the company does. But what you've done is develop a projection mapping platform that allows advertisers to make projection mapping in store windows something that's actually part of a scalable strategy. They're able to buy into projection mapping in a rotation similar to how you might on a digital billboard versus having to maybe be, limited to a short term, 1 week projection mapping in a store window. You've kind of taken this, different approach of, hey, you know what? Let's take this really cool technology because it is so engaging and let's make it scalable. Let's make it something that marketers can build campaigns around, not just have a standalone activation. When did you realize that there was this industry called out of home? When did you realize oh, there's this even bigger industry that we're actually a part of.
Yeah, that's a great that's a great thing to point out. I came in pretty late in the game of out of home and like just learning about this new industry. This was actually after our going into Techstars program, which we'll touch on later. But once we got into Techstars, I just started researching billboards, like street furniture, transit advertisement, this whole industry called OOH. I never, I would see these letters everywhere, and I never understood what it is. But yeah, it's an entire industry based on just physical appearance and physical locations to see advertising. So I learned actually it was fairly in 2020 actually is when I actually started researching, when I Googled what is out of home. That's actually the first, so pretty late in the game. But it definitely opened a whole new side of the industry and media that I didn't know about, and how it operates and the tight knit community and network it is as well. So yeah, that was 2020 is when I started digging into out of home and learning the terms of it.
It's very cool. And what you're doing is very cool with the projection mapping, and it makes sense, the art inspiration for getting into out of home. But you had to start somewhere, and you didn't pick an easy place to start by any means. You didn't pick, hey, we're going to start by hanging 55-inch screens in bars and restaurants. You chose projection mapping in vacant store windows. What was that like? How did you get the first store? Did you know how to pull this stuff off? Like, what was it like 0 to 1? Walk us through that. I think it's such an interesting inflection point in any company's history, but particularly with one using physical real estate and technology in such a creative way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So from my background, I didn't have any sales, like advertising sales background, or real estate background. So the first ideation and concept was, hey, we have to find. This was all, from zero. We didn't have any store or any vacant stores or any advertisers at that moment. So we had to start somewhere. It's like, okay, do we start reaching out to brands to sell them this concept, or do we start getting spaces and then pitching those spaces to the brands? So one of our first client that we executed this MVP was with Lyft Rideshare. So in the beginning, it was pretty funny because we literally, I was going door to door, like calling all these different, anytime you drove by a window, you'll see a leasing sign and it'll have a broker's name on it. I'll just call them up right away, asking them. I called maybe 10 stores in the beginning. They all said no. They're like, who are you? No, we don't want to deal with you. We don't know what this is. No, I just kept getting no's. Luckily, like, I think it was around like the 30th call, like I finally narrowed down the pitch. I was like, okay, I have to figure out like a different way to pitch this. I was pitching them on, hey, we can actually project your leasing signage for the space. And then we will actually help sell advertisers onto that as well. So then we started getting more interest. Then we're like, okay, got it. Yeah, we can help the units by projecting leasing signage, and then we can onboard them, and then at the meantime try to sell the spaces. So by giving a value proposition for the spaces, we were able to land a few locations, and then at the same time we met a senior or associate marketing analyst from Lyft that was working at a music festival in Chicago. They were handing out these Lyft fans. It was like these, for a music festival, it gets hot. They're handing out fans and different souvenirs at the festival. And we just went up to them and asked them, hey, we have this concept. We would love to try to pitch this to you guys. We got their email, and then we sent them the email the next day of this deck that we made with locations that we didn't actually contract or secure, to just like in the talk, like, hey, we have all these locations.
I love it.
Oh yeah, it's just because we had to kind of provide the landlords of someone that was interested at the same time. So we kind of just got loose yeses from both ends to try to make the connection. But yeah, so we went through that process with Lyft, sent them a pitch deck with the locations, the concept, the whole grand visual as well. We designed this really cool idea of this car that we're going to project onto the windows with the wheels.
In fact, Eddie, I've got the Lyft campaign pulled up. Let me share this because here we are talking about something that is so visual. Right. Let me pull this up and you can talk us through it. How about that? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Now this is going to sound silly, but can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. All right. I'm going to press play. I think I've adjusted the volume. Eddie, walk us through. You were just talking about the Lyft. I mean, just the story of just as a quick aside, right? Like the hustle story of getting in contact with the Lyft team and now talking about how the relationship has grown. And we're going to look at a really cool campaign here that you did with Lyft. Talk us through this.
Yeah. So this specific campaign was an activation that we created within Chicago. It was a regional campaign within 3 locations. This was a 3-month campaign throughout the holidays as well. And it was to activate their Roundup and Donate campaign. So users can donate a part of their ride to Chicago public schools. This was a very cool, made sense with what we're doing because it was regional based and Chicago based. So this was the campaign that we activated was a 3-month campaign, which was the first light in the tunnel. We're like, wow, okay, like this is actually something that we can do. And, we executed it from 0 stores to 0 advertisers, which was like, I mean, a lot of times like that was super lucky of us to even be able to have Lyft as like a first client. We did reach out to them. Yeah.
I think most folks listening right now are like, wait, like Lyft was your first client, right? That's, but you shared the story of how it happened, right? And how anyone can do that. No, there's nothing stopping anyone from just rolling up their sleeves and go out and get it.
Yeah.
So that campaign was in Chicago. How many stores was it?
That was 3 locations.
3 stores. And did Lyft share any of the results with you? Did you get any feedback about impact? Any sense of what it delivered for the brand? Surely they were happy with the community element of it, but
we had data analytics that we were able to share with them. So even before when we first did that Lyft one, we had no idea what impression ratings or GeoPath was or any. So we didn't get any impression ratings on these locations. It was more of just a spectacle campaign that we created, experiential campaign. So with the analytics part, we were lacking on that end of providing, but we did have trackers in the locations where we were able to figure out how many people are walking by each location. But when it comes to like impression terms or results, like that was still something that is new to us that we're not able to catch for that specific campaign.
Still super cool. I love it. I love the format. I love the ability to do this in a way, again, that is in a rotation. That's something that I think is really appealing to a lot of advertisers. You happen to have a very cool founder story. Your co-founder is actually your sister. What's it like building a company with a sibling?
There's definitely ups and downs. A lot more downs in the beginning, just based on like the dynamics of being an older brother and like, okay, when do I become the older brother? When do I become, when do I put on like the CEO hat versus the big brother hat? So that was a dynamics that we had to figure out in the beginning. But at the end of the day, I'm so grateful that my sister is, my co-founder, and it's like I couldn't have asked for a better partner, because no matter what, at the end of the day, I always know that, we both know that we have our best interests and we fully, completely trust each other. No matter what, it's like that's the most invaluable thing that any co-founder can have, is like the trust that we have is unlike anything else. So no matter what happens, we get into little bickering arguments, but at the end of the day, we know that we have our best interests, and that's what's the best thing about it. But learning how to navigate, when to, step in as a sibling, as an older sibling, brother, or CEO, that was a struggle for me that I had to figure out. And yeah, it's gotten a lot better now, and I think I've always improving. So we've been working with each other for a little bit over 2 years now, and it's really good now. So I wouldn't have it was just a learning process that we had to go through.
Yeah, I think that's there's so much just family tied into out of home, right? So much of the legacy out of home business is generations of families doing the thing that we're all most passionate about. So I think it's an extra special piece of your origin story and Visual Feeder's history into out of home. You're in Techstars, and there's probably some folks listening that know what Techstars is, and maybe some folks that don't. So I'd love for you to explain what Techstars is. Maybe let's just do that. Explain what Techstars is, but why Visual Feeder is participating in Techstars, and then specifically, how has that helped you to grow faster? How has that helped you to avoid maybe making some mistakes, and any advice that you'd have for other founders that are considering similar opportunities?
Yeah, definitely. So even before joining Techstars, the reason why we joined Techstars is we had this idea of utilizing vacant spaces and using advertisers. We were just telling a few friends and friends about this idea, and then a friend was like, "Oh, this is amazing. I would actually invest in this idea." So that's what triggered it. We're like, really, investors? I never even thought of it. I come from an arts background. I don't think about business
right. You're not thinking venture capital.
I'm not thinking
I'm going to go raise money.
I had no idea what venture capital is. Like, I had no idea what an angel investor or a venture capital. I didn't know the difference. I didn't know. I was completely oblivious of this whole industry, of a whole startup life. But from that moment when our friend said that just triggered something in me. I just started researching. I was like, oh, investors. How do you get investors? What are investors? This whole list. And then we stumbled upon Techstars as an accelerator where they'll provide investment and mentorship. So we applied to Techstars. We actually applied to Y Combinator first. That was another accelerator program. They actually flew us out, did the interview, but they didn't take us in for some reason. Yeah. But then we got into Techstars, and
because it's a bit of a selection process, right? Lots of startups apply, and then you go through rounds of interviews, and it's like an extended version of Shark Tank.
Exactly. It's just like Shark Tank. When we were going through the interview process, they were asking us questions like it was a Shark Tank show. Like, oh, what's your revenue? What's this? What's defensible about, do you have IP? What's proprietary? Like everything. They were just like attacking. They're not questioning, attacking. But yeah, went through So we applied to Techstars. Techstars is a incubator and accelerator where they prepare you for 3 months to pitch to their network of investors. So that entire 3 months, you're learning everything about how to, your business has to become a C Corp for investor in shares. You have to learn how to pitch. You learn about investors, like what is a VC? How do they get their money? What are they looking for in return? You just learn all aspects, and you take the 3 months to pitch to investors in their network. So essentially, that's the whole program. They prepare you to pitch to investors, and to get into these programs as well, it's on par with getting into it's actually harder to get into YC and Techstars more than it is to Harvard.
Wow.
Other aspects. So it's like a very so I never went to an Ivy League school. My parents always wanted me to, but this was like my version of like, hey guys, I made it to
It's
Techstars.
like Ivy League summer camp. It's startup boot camp. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's the point of Techstars, and they completely, they definitely boosted our, network for investors. We were able to raise a seed round of 1.7 million after the Techstars, a year
wow,
after
congrats.
Techstars. Thank you. Yeah,
You're welcome.
to build out this concept and this idea and to really scale it. So yeah, it was there's definitely a great experience, and I think any startup company or any company that would need capital to build an idea, it's a good way to go about it. It's definitely a good shortcut to it's like, you know, hitting that star in Mario and just kind of boost you.
I like that. I like that. We're looking forward to the Mario movie coming out.
Yeah.
And well, you know what? Maybe that's a good segue, because now you got me thinking about that commercial specifically, and the little Mario Kart thing zooming away there, and how cool that could look on a store window.
Exactly.
And that's really, in the opening, we talked about engagement, but that's really what's at the core of all of this. The entire visual feeder platform, all of the store windows, and the ability to do this in rotation, all of that is just, those are features, those are attributes that at the core of this, we're talking about engagement. How do you define engagement? How do you think about engagement?
Yeah, I think engagement as the user wanting to see this or wanting to interact with it. Right? I think a lot of times, you know, we in our DNA, we're always going to have a creative aspect in our company where, you know, creating engaging and interactive experiences in the out of home industry is kind of like our niche and what we'd want to provide. So I've always envisioned, like, what made me interested in out of home as well is sci-fi movies. Like, I don't know if you saw Blade Runner and seen like
Sure.
gigantic holograms. That's what the visual feeder is aiming towards. You know, it's like it's bound to happen in the future where we're going to have these gigantic holograms and interactive visuals. And yeah, that's I want to make that into reality. I want to, you know, create sci-fi into reality. So that's like my vision and goal to do this. But yeah, engagement. Going back to engagement. It's having, at the end, it's having the viewers as the primary customer and caring about how they see it, not, you know, the client themselves about the advertisements, about caring about the viewer and what they think and how they experience that.
And talk about that from a creative standpoint. Is this something that the brand is having to develop brand new creative? Obviously, there's some, you know, there can be some complexity to designing creative that creates the most engagement on a format like this. What's the right creative practice for using a format like yours?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim, because we're going through that as well. Like, how much do we step in as visual feeder to try to guide the user or the advertiser in our space, or how much freedom do they just send us content and we just project, right? So that's always something that we want to try and figure out a good medium. At the end of the day, we want to create a new display or a new kind of inventory that has a lot of these creative capabilities. Our locations are able to create hologram effects. We can create, you know, 3D holograms, and, you know, and also interactive capabilities where someone can walk in front of the screen and they can move in different ways. They can interact with the capturing people's silhouettes. So we have these capabilities, and it's kind of figuring out how do we step in and how do we try to make it a lot better than, you know, the current, because it's such a new technology as well. So that's a good, right now we're operating more as we're getting content, and then we can enhance it with like suggestions and everything. So we kind of play a small part as a creative agency as well. It's kind of creative agency and a media display agency that kind of mixed together. But yeah, this is still something that we're working on to try to figure out what's the best way to navigate this path. But I'm glad that you brought it up, and yeah, it's a good question to ask, even for us.
It's because it's always right. It's always the choke point we get to. Wow, this is really cool. I want to do this. except I don't have the creative resources
Yeah.
or, X, Y, and Z. It's always that. So it's a good conversation to have up front. And
Yeah.
I think that the education piece really, coming from the publisher is so valuable, right? For the brand. On the buy side, it's something that we can do to better serve our clients, right? Which is having great collaborative relationships with partners like yourselves to understand how do we create maximum engagement on this network? How do we create the most out of what this opportunity is? Because at the end of the day, it's just space and it's what you do with it. So we might as well, talk about how to do the best dang job possible. How many storefronts do you have now in the marketplace?
Yeah, currently, right now, we have around 70 locations that are available. And we have around 28 that's live and active with projection.
And what markets are those primarily focused in? If there's anybody listening right now, a brand, an agency, somebody that's particularly curious about this, where are those located?
Yeah, our two biggest markets are Chicago and New York. So
hot markets for everybody. So there's definitely some opportunity lingering out there in the listening audience right now. And you should definitely get in touch with Eddie. We'll tell you how to get in touch with Eddie at the end of this. But Eddie, just want to come back to something here, which is we're recycling unused space. This is otherwise vacant commercial real estate. And that's providing, a revenue stream to help offset the cost of the space going unoccupied. But if I'm an advertiser and let's say, hey, all of a sudden this space where I'm advertising gets leased out, how is that going to affect my campaign?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our campaigns, we have a lot of different, we're regional based as well. So when we have a lease that's for a specific campaign, we usually lock in that time or that time frame with the landlord, and they're aware of that. Usually, even when a lease is signed for a commercial space, it takes at least 30 plus days to transfer and get the contracts ready to flip over for a full turnover when the keys are handed over. So we definitely play in that leeway time. And then we also, landlords are aware of the active or of the time frame. For spaces that we are unable to have at least of a 30-day turnaround, we always have secondary locations that are approved beforehand. So at any time, at any given time, we're always prepared for any kind of switch where we actually give double the time now if that ever occurs. For the advertiser themselves. So it would almost be better if they did find, if they did have to switch, because then their campaigns could be twice as long. But we have a few scenarios where we're able to prevent any kind of transitions. But if there are transitions, we'll also compensate by adding additional time as well.
And from a adding new markets perspective, are you planning to go deeper in the markets that you're already in? Is it more markets? What's kind of the growth plan for 2023 and beyond? Obviously, we've got to fill space and grow responsibly, but what's the long-term vision?
Yeah, I think for right now, for 2023, we want to really capture more of our market in these two specific cities and really gain a larger footprint, because we have operations that's more tightly knit. Once we can operate very smoothly within these two cities, we can just replicate that into the next city instead of spreading ourselves too thin and having in too many different spaces. We want to operate very smoothly, very efficiently in a specific region, and really have our footprint there, and then we'll scale into more cities.
Because not only are you building kind of first in class projection mapping network platform here, you're also building a two-sided marketplace, as if one thing weren't hard, both of those things are challenging. So it's balancing that new supply with new demand and being able to do that in a way that you can scale. So a la DoorDash, a la Grubhub, you're doing it, and that's exciting to watch. Eddie, for anyone that is interested, wants to learn more, wants to get in touch with you, to look into doing some campaigns together, where do they go? Give them the Latin long.
Yeah. You can visit www.visualfeeder.com. We have an inquiry bound in there to submit any kind of information. We also are launching our marketplace application, which is completely new. This is actually a first. I'll announce it on this.
Ooh, tell me more. Tell me more.
App.visualfeeder.com is where you can go to check out all of our inventory, and you can actually it's a marketplace where you can go in and upload your own content and see how they'll look on the window fronts, see all demographic. So app.visualfeeder.com. So visit there and you can submit inquiries in there as well. But yeah, those are, or email, you can email at hello@visualfeeder.com.
Right on. I just pulled it up. Let's look at it real quick. Hang on. I got it up. Yeah, this is super clean. I mean, it's a modern real estate shopping type of experience. You can see lots of great creative. This is awesome. I'm going to go share this with my team internally as soon as we get off. This is awesome. Yeah. And you can see just the variety of different types of storefronts and what those windows all look like. I mean, this is obviously an incredible structure here.
Yeah.
Are these all through, is it through commercial real estate groups? Is it one-off owners? Like, is it a mixed bag of kind of all the above?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. We have a lot of locations from JLL that we would partner with, and then a mixed bag. Some are one-off owners. So it's really a lot of different. We have a few mall locations as well with their inventory. So
yeah, this is awesome. I'm so excited to watch you guys grow and to see what you do in the space. This is definitely something that's exciting. Eddie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. If you found this to be helpful, please share it with somebody who could benefit. As always, make sure to smash that subscribe button and leave a review. That's how you help us grow.
Quarter century, I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows, we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands, cause divided we fall and together we stand.